Use AI, leverage it as much as you can. If you don't know it, get someone else to do it.
Love how we always tie AI into it. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about.
Don't get them involved at such a deep level right away, because getting a co-founder is more than just someone with technical knowledge.
What are the biggest mistakes that you've seen founders make? Welcome to episode 3 of Founders Plus AI. Real talk for founders building big with AI. I'm Michelle Akhidenor, and I'm here with my co-host Boon. So you've got an idea. Now who's building it with you? So this episode is all about how to build the right team without defaulting to just find a CTO. We'll break down co-founders versus venture studios, AI tools versus engineers, and how to move fast without writing code yourself. So Boon, let's dive straight in. So Boon, the first question I've got for you is, do you really need a CTO? You know, everyone says find your technical co-founder. You can't do this without them. But, you know, it's the age of AI and it's 2025. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it's a timing issue. So we have to kind of think about what CTO really is. CTO is a person that manages a team of developers, and they put process in place. They look at the architectural side of things. So if you're at an early stage where you're building out an idea or you're trying to validate an idea, to try to even go into the thinking of getting a CTO is almost like trying to kind of like be an adult while you're still a child, right? So it's kind of jumping the gun there. Now there's many ramifications. And so I think one of the things that people can think about is what happens if you get someone when you don't need them versus, all the opposite, right? When you need them, but you don't get them. Now, the early stage is usually that you want to be careful of not getting someone when you don't need them because, there's a cost associated with everything, as I mentioned last time. I think in the AI age, even the tech co-founder part can be postponed in some ways. You can get someone who knows technical to come and help you on things that maybe AI cannot help you with, but you don't necessarily make them the co-founder. So I'm not saying that you don't get someone involved that knows technology early on. What I'm saying is that don't get them involved at such a deep level right away, because getting a co-founder is more than just someone with technical knowledge. They have to share your values. You have to be able to, tolerate them, and vice versa. And when there's conflict, so there's a lot of things you have to work through to know if that person should be a co-founder or not. So I would say, yeah, early stage, definitely CTO is way too early because you're still a child and you need to prove out the product idea before you form a team. And then that's when you need a CTO to manage them.
It's so interesting you put it that way. I think there's such a misconception in the industry where it's just like, I'll use myself as an example. I don't know anything to do with tech, but I have this glorious idea and I want to make an impact. What would you say to founders that feel like they're 50% there with the idea? They've kind of fleshed it out. They've talked to a couple of different people. They just aren't technical and so don't really know what's next. Like, what would you say is the best next move for them to make at that stage?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So there's not really obviously one answer to, because they're all different situations. Yeah. But I would say with AI, be very clear about the current situation that they have. Because I think running a startup, a lot of it comes down to clarity. You want to have clarity. So same thing to your question, right? You're trying to get clarity on that. So you have to feed enough information to a mentor, an AI, whatever, so that the clarity is there, so you know what to do next. It's hard to have a scripted sort of response to this because everyone's situation is a little different. But I would say be resourceful and really understand what is at your disposal. I say that right now with AI, that's really the first go-to sort of person, quote unquote, that you can get sort of advice on, to the questions that you just asked. Yeah.
Love how we always tie AI into it. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about the founder that goes, okay, I hear what you're saying, Boon, but, I guess my options really are at this stage after I've had a chat with AI or to a mentor, a CTO, an engineer, a venture studio. Like I've got a couple of different options there. What is the difference between those three options?
Yeah. Engineer to me is a builder, someone that can build. So again, now we run into a very interesting scenario here or era here where we have AI that can be a CTO, an engineer, not so much a venture studio, because venture studio is a full structure, a full team behind what do you need. So I would say at the very least, the AI itself can act as an engineer. You don't technically need a CTO other than if you need to figure out the process side of things, you can also ask questions that you typically ask a CTO to the AI. But I would say engineer is someone that you would hire to help you build that stuff out if you don't have the capability. But now with AI, people are building prototypes and MVPs in a short amount of time. So the cost of using AI to do what an engineer used to do is so much lower, and the speed is so much higher. So the validation now becomes very cheap to do. So if someone doesn't do the validation, the cost of not doing that is very high. Venture studio is a different beast. Venture studio is more of a support system, whether it be CTO, engineer, or a venture studio. It's the fact that whether the person who is working with you right now, whether there's alignment or not. So what I mean by that is, let's just say engineer. The engineer can come from an agency. It could be someone that I hire. But either way, there's alignment. Are they working on this project because, a lot of times for self-interest, they want cash, they think the project is good. You want to make sure the alignment is clear and the alignment is there. So hiring an agency to do it is very risky, but even if they have an engineer that they can provide you, is because if the alignment is not there, which is that they want to make cash, they don't care about the success of the product, that's what's going to cause this startup to fail, right? The venture studio model has better alignment because they are foregoing a lot of the cash or profit in exchange for equity. So they have to actually be very careful about you vetting the product, vetting you before they would agree to work with you. But again, sometimes agency can also disguise themselves as ventures, so you have to kind of like vet that out as well. But I would say alignment is what you need to pay attention to, whether you're getting someone like an engineer or a venture studio, and in what mode, right? Whether it's a part-time mode, full-time mode, and agency mode. So that alignment has to be established correctly so that you get success, because both sides want to have the same outcome. Yeah.
I love how you talk about alignment. What should we be looking out for when it comes to figuring out if this venture studio or if the engineer is aligned?
Yeah. So questions, obviously, you have to ask them to see track record, right? If they love to build products, what kind of products they like to build. If you look at the portfolio that they have and they focus on building a lot of bad products, even without them answering your question, the alignment is not there, because you want your product to be a good quality product. So for someone to be building products that are not good, that are not sort of like useful to most people, they are already telling you that even if they say that they align with you, their part is probably something else. They're probably looking for something else, right? So looking at what they've done in the past is a good signal of whether the alignment is there or not. But I think at the end of the day, as you have to look at what kind of alignment do I need to have in order for me to have the best outcome with my venture. Think about it this way. And let's just say I'm not technical, and you as a venture studio put someone on my project, but internally something bad happens. Now, anytime when you involve human, something bad could happen. There's a chance that, right? Now, if the alignment is there, technically they should surface that issue to you, because you don't know, and if they don't tell you, you won't know until much later. So the alignment is so important, because if they don't tell you, that means they're gonna hurt themselves. So they have to tell you and say, we're gonna fix, we're gonna replace this, fire a person. And that exposing of issues is a sign of alignment, because they align with you in terms of doesn't mean you won't run into challenges, doesn't mean you won't make mistakes, but at least you expose that and correct that. And so that's what alignment can do. So if you don't see those things happening, that means there's something wrong with the alignment, no matter what they say. Yeah.
What questions should we be asking the venture studio engineer, CTO, what questions should we be asking at the very early days to try and assess that alignment?
Actually, it's the other way around. You kind of want to see what kind of questions they ask.
Interesting.
Because when you go into a thing and you tell them what you want to achieve and you sense that they're not asking a lot of questions about your product, it's either that they're not interested in it or they don't have the domain knowledge or combination of the two, right? Enough knowledge about product building to be asking questions. So it's kind of like if I interview someone for the job, if they come here and if they're only here to just answer my questions without asking questions about what I do, that's usually a bad signal there. So I would actually pay attention to the questions that they ask as well. In fact, I would probably put more weight on that, the quality of the questions they ask. Because it's not just about trying to land a job. If they're only trying to land a job, the alignment there is going to get affected in some ways, right? So, but if they are really looking for the next best thing to work on, the alignment tends to be high because they are doing as much vetting on you as that you are on them. Yeah.
I love how you said like the vetting on both sides. I think that's where it sometimes gets missed out. I think sometimes the founder might think, oh, well, I'm interviewing you guys or I'm trying to suss you out. But at the end of the day, I love how it's like, no, we're trying to suss each other out. We're trying to figure out if there is alignment. Earlier, you talked about the idea that, building any business, that CTO role or that venture studio role is so pivotal to the success of the early success, at least of the venture. How do we know in those couple of early conversations that it's going to be successful with this partner?
Yeah. Signals, right? You're trying to get as much signals as you can from those people. So you have to pay attention to the way they respond to you. It's one thing to tell you what you need to hear. It's another thing to tell you what you like to hear, right? So telling you what you need to hear means you throw them a stupid idea, they'll tell you the idea is stupid. You want someone like that. You don't want someone that tells you what you like to hear, right? Because if they tell you what you like to hear, that's not going to get you anywhere. So signals like that you have to pay attention to. And so I think it comes down to really looking at the other person. You want someone who is very sort of conscious about their contribution, their time, their fit, to make sure that they are the right person to be on this, right? And so so you have to come up with some questions to get proper signals from the conversations to know whether they are the right person or not. So meaning that, if you throw certain scenarios at them, how do they deal with that, those scenarios? Assuming those scenarios you're going to run into at some point, how do they deal with that? Have they run into it before? So those are the kind of things you can also get from them. If you run into conflict, sort of disagreements, how do you deal with that? Give me an example of disagreements that you've run into before. Give me examples of issues you've run into before when you work with some other projects, challenges. How did you deal with that? If they say there's no challenges, if they give you some challenges that are not really real, then you know that the answer is probably not. You want to have real challenges that they can sort of point to and then tell you how they fix it. Maybe the picture is not always pretty, but at least you're getting a good, sort of sign of how they solve those issues when they come up. Yeah.
So fascinating. So let's just say in the scenario, I've asked you a million questions, right? You've asked me a million questions. What happens after that point? So obviously in the case of Central Lab AI, you guys are a venture studio. What happens after that? Is it commitment for a life together? Like, it can be really scary to think about, this is my little baby, this idea I have. I'm going to dedicate the next probably 10 years as a founder, or 5 to 10, whatever. Like, what happens when I go, okay, cool, I feel like there's some sort of alignment. Boon gets it. Like, I feel like he's asked me a lot of questions. What happens after that point?
So understand that anything that you get into, the relationship is quite dynamic, meaning that you're getting to know each other, right? You can only get so much from asking questions. So I like to actually move into the build phase quite quickly. Come up with something that's low risk, meaning sort of a dating phase, right? I go into the dating phase, no commitment on equity set up yet, but just a phase where you're not charging me at cost. Because I'm taking risk paying money, but you're taking risk to make sure that I'm the right founder to work with. So come up with some setup where both sides are taking risks. That's important. It should not be one side taking the risk, because if it is one side taking the risk, then it comes down to, again, the agency model again, where the alignment is not there. So if you get into a thing where both sides are taking the risk to try each other out, again, the how they work with you can change from project to project. They could be very busy right now. They could run into issues right now. They could, the world is very dynamic. They could be running into personnel issues at the moment. They are looking for new people to, so getting that phase where you go in there and start figuring out what kind of problems you run into, working out communication, styles. For example, some founder likes to know update every day. Some founders don't care. You tell them once every few months and it's okay for them. So that kind of stuff has to be worked out. So dating phase is very important.
And how long should that dating phase go for typically?
There's not really a specific time. It's more, some can be really fast. Both sides work just so well. It could just right away go into a real, product building phase. Some could be just like, you just don't like them. They don't like you in some ways. And then in that case, it's a matter of figuring out when to call it quit, or if you want to give more chances, like a few more attempts, because both sides can change based on feedback. So timeline depends on the chemistry and so there's not really a fixed timeline there. But the key thing is to be able to do things to get you signals. Am I getting enough signals to tell me that this is the right team that I can work with?
So fascinating. And again, I like to deep dive into this point because I think finding the right people to build with, and any founder would tell us and would tell you, is just so, I almost think it's the number one most important thing, even more so than your idea at some, in some instances. What are the biggest mistakes that you've seen founders make at this very, very critical early stage of developing or figuring out that team?
Some of the early stage, I think, mistakes that I think I see. If you think about a startup, the person who is building the startup is the number one thing before the startup gets built. So I would say one mistake that a lot of people make is they didn't work on themselves enough. That's very important. If you don't have the right foundation as a person, how are you going to be building a product? It's a very high stress. It's almost like parenting in a way, right? You can learn as you go, but you still have to have good foundation. What do I mean by foundation? You have to sleep enough. You have to eat well. You have to exercise. You have to build resilience and that sort of stuff. So I would say those things are very, very important to get right? People, a lot of founders really ignore those things. So really, it comes down to the fundamentals. Everything comes down to the fundamentals. You have to really focus on those things first, and then you get into building the product itself. But most people, they ignore that, and then they fail. But a lot of times it's because of them. Because at the end of the day, when you think about building a product, it's not about getting it done correctly, right away. It's whether you have enough funds, enough resilience, enough perseverance to really get to where you need to go. AI, everyone has access to it. You got to make sure you have it. It's there. You got to make sure you leverage that. But pay attention to yourself. That's very, very important. Yeah.
So, such a good point, and I think so undervalued by so many founders. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about building with AI. So in those very early days where you're figuring out who your team is, where you're probably trying to come up with some sort of prototype of your product, what should be the step that a founder like myself with no technical background should be taking when it comes to the use of AI to kind of brainstorm, yes, but also build that prototype?
Yeah. If you think about AI right now, if you look at AI, get a lot of the knowledge from processing data, right? You're training the AI with data. They don't actually have the sensory. They don't, for example, if I say AI say apple is sweet, they don't actually know apple is sweet. They don't have that sense. They just learned it from processing a lot of text that apple is sweet or some apples are sweet. When it comes to building something, you have an idea about something, but until you see it in your hand, when you press, that loop is not complete. So you can feel very passionate about an idea and you really love the idea, but the building of that gives you that sense that, oh, what you envision still feels the same, like when you have it in your hand. So I think being able to get to that point where you have that sensory type feedback, where you get that feeling, that, oh yeah, this is exactly how I envision it. And not just that, but you're building that enough for someone else to also give you that same feedback as well. Then you know you're heading in the right direction, right? So that's why the whole thing about building something is about, again, it's about signals. That signal of, the signal that you feed yourself when you're just thinking about an idea at the ideation phase is not always correct. Sometimes you can fool yourself. Other times, even when you get a product, you might still send wrong signals to yourself and say, "Oh, this is a great product." But at the very least, every single step of the way, you're trying to generate more signals and more correct signals, so you know you're solving the right problem, right? And that signals can come from you, it can come from people that you're trying to serve, and you have to be careful too, not to have the wrong people, to use. So, again, all these things comes down to really doing a lot of that, because I can say all the different use cases that are out there, but until you do it, you still won't fully understand it, right? So I think the doing part is so important, especially with the AI space right now. Even in trying to figure out what to build, how much to build, all those things, you can have AI sort of help you vet that out as well. Of course, you have to guide it, you have to use your own judgment, but at least have someone to talk to be able to give you some feedback and challenge your thinking. It's such a valuable thing to do. So I think that's why it's such a good time right now to build, because you get that sounding board and that feedback loop very early on from AI, if not from real people testing out their products. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about investors. So, at this very early stage, when you're thinking, okay, team, venture studio, CTO, engineer, and then like, okay, V1, what's V1 going to look like? Or MVP, where does this idea of investors come into play? Like, should you be thinking at this very early stage, okay, I'm looking to build this so obviously I can raise.
Yeah.
How much should you be influenced by what investors will like to see versus what you feel is right to build?
Yeah, good question. It depends on the investors as well. Some investors are users, some investors are not users, right? Or vice versa. Some users can be investors. And so talking to investors before you need to talk to them, to me, is good, because you get to see what kind of questions they ask. Because at the end of the day, the investor will at least have one thing in their head, which is that, how do I get my money back, right? Because they cannot invest without having that in their mind. Otherwise, they cannot invest for too long. So being able to really see things from their perspective is important. And it's important because you do need to make money with your product. Yeah. So you don't actually need to look at it from the standpoint of getting money from them. You can look at things from the standpoint of them basically challenging you. How are you going to make money? How are you going to grow? How big can you grow? Right? So talking to investors early on is very useful in the sense that they are actually making you sort of consider a lot of things early on when you're doing it. Because you could have a good idea, but the good idea sometimes depends on many different criteria. How many people are out there? How many people are able to and willing to pay for your product? All those things can be coming from the investors. So I always encourage people to talk to investors before they need to talk to them. Just the same way as I tell people to go interview for a job before they need to switch a job. Because you want to feel the market pulse and you want to really understand what's out there. So I would say, yes, investors are useful, important. Also, and I think there's really interesting as you talk to more and more investors, you're going to start noticing that some people ask very different questions as well. So even getting that sort of different patterns or different feedback from different investors will allow you to know when to go back to them again if they say no at this point. And you never know, maybe you do run into investors that want to invest in you right away. But the talking to investors part, and I think that's really useful, is that you now need to tell a story about what you're trying to solve very early on. So a lot of CEOs a lot of founders don't know how to tell a story about what they're trying to build. They're just building something that they're excited about, but nobody cares. So you have to be able to know how to tell a story, because you are, in a way, selling your product as well. So investors are like the first group of people you can try to sell to, because they have to open their wallet. Anyone can tell you they like your idea, but if they're not being put in a position where they have to give you the money, how much can you trust that? Their response. So yeah, I would say go to investors not necessarily just to please them per se, but more to have them sort of to help you cover your blind spots. Yeah.
just am nodding along furiously as you say that, Boon, because
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the number one validation of any product is if someone's willing to open their wallet and give you any $1 or
Yeah.
50 million, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I think that's so, so valuable. Boon, this has been awesome as always. I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit about and get your feedback on my very own AI idea. So in the earlier episodes, we talked a little bit about it. So it's Peers AI. It's an AI voice cloning translation interactive tool for podcasts. So I updated it to include the interactive feature that you mentioned based on your feedback. So at this stage, just like many founders, I'm very much so in the ideation phase, trying to understand what would be exciting for myself to build, but then also what's going to make this attractive from an investor standpoint, from a team building standpoint. So at this very early stage where I'm probably 50% formulated in the idea, as someone who's non-technical, doesn't have that tech background, what should be my first move when I think about building a team at this very early stage? And it obviously is going to be equity-based.
Yeah. I wouldn't even go to the team part yet, but to see how far you can go with the AI tool that is out there, right? You build it yourself or get someone else who has built with an AI tool to help them help you. I don't like to go into engaging people or hiring people because, especially full-timers, because anytime when you hire, there's many layers of things you have to deal with, right? Psychology, their happiness, motivation, that sort of stuff. With AI, flip the switch. You don't want to use it, just turn on your computer. So I would say push as far as you can with AI first to see how much you can get that thing in your hand, so you can feel like, okay, I'm still feeling good about this product now that I'm seeing it, in front of me. That part AI can do very well right now. Now, if you don't know how to do it, of course, AI can guide you or teach you, or you can just find someone who, who has done it, and just pay them small amount of fee and say, I'd like you to come just prompt AI and an AI tool and just come up with a prototype that is close to my vision so I can feel it out. Now, once you do that, really what it comes down to is that, now can I still keep on doing it this way? If not, if things start getting sort of a diminishing return, at what point should you, then you're gonna know that, right? So now you're gonna bring people in because you know the need is there. Again, the cost of not doing that, right? Something that you need but that you don't really sort of have, you're gonna be paying the cost for it, right? So and then you will know that the cost is there. Either the time is like running out, or so then you have to basically hire someone to make up for that. AI tool is great, but AI tool is not there right now in terms of being a full-fledged thing yet. It can get you far enough for you to see the vision, but for it to turn into a product where a full team can support, can build, chances are that will still take some little bit of time for it to get there. But go as far as you can, feel it out, get good signals from investors, from people around you, and if you need help, hire some part-time people to help with that. Once you have good product market fit, meaning that people really love that product and want to pay for it, then you can think about forming a team around it. Because remember, this payroll is, you don't want to be in a fixed payroll where you're burning a ton of cash every month. You want to be in a position where you can move things around quickly and easily. So then, if you need to validate, you hire more people. If you need to validate less but do something else, you hire less people. That part needs to be very nimble for you to do. But don't try to mimic a corporate structure before you're even there yet, right? And people do that too soon. They look at the company, or they have 100 people, they try to go 100 people. No, the less people you can do this with, the better. And so I would say that use AI, leverage it as much as you can. If you don't know it, get someone else to do it. Now, another thing I like to do sometimes is that even if I get an engineer to build whatever, I sometimes will get another person in as well, so I can compare the two.
Side by side.
Yeah. So the side by side thing, they don't know. I mean, they can know and may not know. It doesn't matter. But the key thing is that you give them a task, and then here's the thing that I always tell people as well. You get a full-time CTO or a full-time engineer. How do you know that's the person that is always going to be right for you? But then they are very hard to switch, replace, because they are there. And I don't like that rigid structure before you get to a point where rigid structure, is better, right? You need to have a position where this person is very good at tech, But the moment you start using that so-called CTO, they might start exhibiting some behaviors you don't like. Or maybe they're good with one tech but not the other. You cannot just use that tech because you have that CTO. But then what do you do then? So being in a position where you can switch people in and out on a merit basis is very important. You don't want to really lock yourself in. So I think that also should go into any sort of hiring decision. Yeah.
And let's just say I get to that stage, or any founder gets to that stage where they've built out some sort of prototype. So I've done that on Lovable, and then I've, let's just say, hired an engineer on a project basis just to build the AI. At what stage would we come to a venture studio? Is it at that stage, or do we need to have market validation? Like, do we need to actually get people to test the product, like live clients, or?
Personally, for me, I would go to venture studio on day one. On day one, because to me, venture studio they built a lot of ventures. I mean, assuming they have a solid track record, they built a lot of ventures. Now, that's not to say they want to run into issues building a problem. There could still be misestimation. There could be other things that could come up. But I would go to them right away because they are a GPS. They are good GPS. So when I drive and I want to go somewhere, I want to have GPS. Because I know I can get there figuring it out myself, but it's going to take I'm going to make a lot of wrong turns and things like that. I would use a venture studio early on as my GPS, because it can start telling me what to build, what not to build, what to focus on, what not to focus on. That sort of stuff I need guidance on. So I would use venture studio, and then of course beyond that, the sort of support on the personnel side of things, the funding side of things, all those are very, very useful for me, because then I can focus on the product, on fundraising, and not so much on the infrastructure side of things. So venture studio, I would probably loop them in as soon as I can. Once you have the Lovable thing, because in fact, once you have the Lovable thing, you would actually help them vet out whether they're the right company to help you or not. So just giving the idea is good. Good venture studio, sometimes they can listen to your idea for 30 seconds, they'll know right away. But remember this, they are investing in your product.
Yeah.
So they have to be good at this. But having a product that you built from Lovable and show it to a venture studio can help you. So now it comes down to picking the right venture studio, the good one versus the bad one. Because like anything that you go to, there's good and bad. And sometimes a good one can also become bad, because we're all human, we can make mistakes, but principally they should align in terms of values, meaning we're both honest, we're both transparent, that sort of stuff. Everything else that you run into challenges, you can kind of go through it together, right? So making sure that core values you share with the venture studio, but having them come in early on, you can get a ton of value compared to trying to get a CTO who is working part-time. Now, this is not a problem. People get CTO because they don't want to pay. They think, hey, I get an engineer or a CTO or a tech co-founder. One of the reasons they get that is because they want to save money on paying them. Bad idea. That's not how you get a tech CTO. You get a tech CTO because of other things. In fact, you don't probably need more than just a tech CTO. A tech co-founder, you need someone who is good at product design. You need many people in one or multiple people to help you with your venture. Tech is just one of them. So now with AI, the need for a tech co-founder or CTO is even less. You need someone that you can bring in to provide oversight, but they don't need to have equity set up with you right away. Yeah.
Interesting. And I guess my final question on this is, we'd love to understand a little bit more about what is the setup with a venture studio in terms of equity split.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear out there. Everyone talks about co-founder 50-50. It makes a lot of sense, even though, as you've pointed out, there's so much risk associated with that. If you go for that in the early days, you don't know the person, you're still getting to know each other, and, you're kind of running before you walk.
Yeah.
What does that equity setup look like? I'm sure there's a way for it to, in the long run, when a CTO does come in, it doesn't hinder that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, good question. So the equity setup with a venture studio, some of that actually, the risk of not setting that up correctly is the same as if you were to deal with a tech co-founder. Sometimes I have two people coming to me and do 50-50. I'm like, right away, no, let's change that. You don't want to run into a gridlock where both people have equal say on things. And I know Silicon Valley likes to have, founders, like companies with two founders. I actually don't mind working with solo founders and bring additional help if they need to. with maybe minority stake, because there's no issue with, like fallout. Partnership fallout is very common in the startup world. Now, in terms of equity setup with venture studio, make it so that nothing is set in stone, meaning that you don't give out a large chunk of equity to someone quickly. Because again, remember, you have to assume, you want to hope for the best, but also have to assume that bad things can happen. Bad things may not always happen only to bad people. Sometimes even with the best intention, bad things can happen, right? So you want to make sure that if you're both getting into it with some setup, but if bad thing happens, what do you do? So I don't really like to have a setup where, like even with a tech co-founder, you give out 30% right away. Well, what if it doesn't work out? 30% is gone. Should be based on time, should be based on contribution, should be based on, a few different factors, so that if and when things don't work out, you can back out of it without losing your shirt, right? So that part is something that people have to really pay attention to, whether it be the setup be with the venture studio or not. It's set up in such a way where when contribution comes in, their equity stake gets accrued. That's how you should do it. And then have some sort of exit, a situation where if things don't go right, what would you do? Yeah.
So valuable, Boon. Legend. Thank you. I think it can always get so confusing. And I think in this world, when we're talking about equity, when we're talking about very early stages of an idea, when we're thinking about, okay, am I the right person to just take it all the way, or do I need that support? I think you've clarified so much, at least for myself and for all of us listening, around what that setup needs to be. And I think that my biggest takeaway from this is just be conservative. I think Silicon Valley sometimes paints that very boisterous and just kind of go for it and throw 50-50 and you won't make it without someone else and all of that. But I think what we're learning today is more about taking that conservative seat, using AI because we have it now to almost fill a lot of the gaps that, in the past an engineer would have potentially had to fill. Proceed with caution as well as optimism, but proceed with caution. So look, Boon, this has been so, so great. I cannot wait for the next episode where we're diving into MVP, so how to build your MVP. And so for everyone listening in, stay tuned for that and make sure to hit subscribe so that you don't miss what's next. And then follow Centaur Lab AI on LinkedIn and YouTube, and join our newsletter. If you have an idea of your very own, you can pitch it to us there. We'll see you next time, builders.
This episode is brought to you by Ego, short for Your Extended Ego. Imagine an AI version of you nurturing relationships behind the scenes 24/7. Ego takes care of all virtual networking behind the scenes, all in your voice. Sometimes we simply don't have enough time. We forget to follow up, we forget details about that one person. But with Ego, you never have to miss out on a good connection. Ego, your network supercharged.